All right. So we're in Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj's I Am That. We're on chapter 31. Do not undervalue attention. Indeed, because the case can be made that attention or awareness and the divine are one, and that really we in our nature are pure attention, which means attention with no objects in it. So universal awareness, but with no object, only subject, as it were. And he's talking about how to find this inside of us. We've talked and kind of established that just like the universe has Shakti and Shiva, Shiva, the unmanifest, the uh, absolute unchanging divine, Brahman, and well, not, I guess Shiva's not, well, yes, anyway, they're all the same. Brahman, and then Shakti, the world of change, this constant flow of unrepeated change that we experience. So the universe has both of those, and when we come to our highest consciousness, they cease to be different. They are the same. And we talked a little bit last week that the way that works is you've got the moment, which is like the point of a pin, the head of not the head of a pin, but the point of the pin is the pure moment. And in that pure moment, if you're actually directly on the moment, there's no change in the moment. It's like a frame in a movie. There's no change in it. There's no movement. That's Brahman, as it were, right? The absolute, unmanifest, unchanging. And if you have even the slightest bit of egoism, the slightest idea of me and mine mixed into the mind, you're not able to stand on the point of the pin, because egoism is comprised entirely of the past. And so to be identified with that, when you look at the moment, you're actually sitting on the very edge of the past, as it were, forced by egoism, because you can't see the moment as it is. The moment has to be processed, and the mind tells you how the moment is, as long as you're identified with it. And so when you're in that egoistic state of consciousness, you're sitting on the edge of the past and observing the present moment. And what happens, that's just like in the movies. When you sit in a movie theater, you're actually sitting on the last frame that your eye saw, and in memory now, looking at the current frame. And the mind is seeing a slight difference between the two. And so that's how a movie moves. That's how things change, is because you're identified with the previous frame, looking at the current frame, the mind creates a narrative for how this frame became that frame. And it describes that difference through change, through movement. And so that's our experience. When we are in deluded state, in egoistic mind, we're sitting on the previous frame of the moment and staring at the current moment, looking through all of our attachments and all of that stuff. So we can't see the moment as it is, but we see that it's different from the frame we're sitting on. And so the mind creates narrative, creates change, right, in associating the two. And so this is what we're trying to overcome, as it were. Within us is a shrine of the absolute unchanging divine principle of Satchitananda. And then in our expression in the moment, if you're an enlightened soul, is a spontaneous expression of that nature of yours without any egoism mixed into it, or maybe the slightest egoism, a love for God or a love for devotees or whatnot like that, to keep your body, to keep your existence. And it is that Satchitananda that in us becomes a verb. In Brahman, Satchitananda is noun. There's no action in it as such. We are the manifestation of that. All right. Now, we got a rather shocking sentence to start with this morning. It's very interesting because I was just, my little vlog that I did yesterday, I was reading in this book called How to Know God, this book right here. That's basically a discussion of the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And I found a verse that basically said the same thing as what this verse here says this morning. Our Maharaj is speaking, And he says, if you want to sin, right? If you want something that you know is avidya, meaning it's not taking you toward the light, it's a delusion. If you want to sin, sin wholeheartedly and openly, right? Just do it, but do it with awareness, do it with purpose, do it with presence. Why? Because then you bring your awareness into the situation, and awareness always unties the knots of delusion, because awareness is sourced in Satchitananda. So anything that its gaze goes upon, with awareness, not with delusion, but with pure awareness, it combs the soul, as it were, takes the knots out, takes the confusion out. So he's saying, if you want to sin, do it wholeheartedly. Don't go into hiding. Don't push the thought of God away so that you can get away with your little world of vice, whatever that might be. Don't go into a state of ignorance, where you're ignoring the present, where you're ignoring all of the other arguments in your mind about whether this is a good idea or not a good idea. Put all of that aside, right, and just go forward. Do it with purpose and with observation, because if you do that, you'll become aware that it is not what it seems, that it does not give you what you're looking for, and it does not, and the little bit it gives you does not last. And you'll instantly see that you get put on a stationary bicycle when you indulge in those things, because of those three factors. You have to constantly get more and more and more. And then the way that Mother has set the game up is that the same amount isn't going to satisfy you the same amount each time. You're going to need more and more and more as time goes on. You become a connoisseur of your vices, and a simple breaking of the vices won't do. Now it has to be with such and such a style of thing, of this color, of that size, of this smell, and whatnot. And so life becomes consumed with seeking out your pleasures, right? We become defined by them. So he says, if you want to sin, sin wholeheartedly and openly. Vivekananda interestingly says the same thing. Sins too have their lessons to teach the earnest sinner, right? So that's the earnestness, is just admitting, well, I really want to do this. I haven't been able to let go of it. My discernment is not strong, has not been very fruitful. So you go in with a full heart, and with all of your awareness. You indulge in your practice, and then you learn the lessons by holding them in your awareness, by looking at what it gave you, how it was, what you were actually doing, instead of the story world of the mind, which is what gets us in those tangles. Because the mind only replays the pleasurable part, whatever your vice is. It just keeps looping that little bit of pleasure, and you keep thinking, that's what I want, that's what I want, that's what I want. But you forget the whole story, that with every bit of pleasure comes payment for that pleasure, comes misery, and desire produces misery. It is the natural function of desire, because you're elated, then it's gone, you're unhappy. Then you have to go and clamor and work to get again, and you're happy for a moment, and then you're unhappy. And on it goes. So he says, sins too have their lessons to teach the earnest sinner, as virtues, the earnest saint. It is the mixing up of the two that is so disastrous. Nothing can block you so effectively as compromise, for it shows lack of earnestness, without which nothing can be done. Right? So without which nothing can be done. Good morning, Anna. And Liz, Rangu, Tom. But yes, so he's saying here, that it's earnestness that is vital. And Ramakrishna repeats this so many times in the gospel. Earnestness is couples with sincerity. It's that you really are clear on what you want, and what you want to know. And you have a certain integrity about things. You're really coming to a place where your yes means yes and your no means no. The compromise part of it washes out any integrity inside, because you slip past your censors by saying I'm complying, even though you're not fully complying, because your heart's split. You want the success of spiritual life, you want the bliss of spiritual life, but you also want a little bit of the boga out there, the enjoyment from the world. And if you do that, Ramakrishna says it's very much like trying to run water through a ditch that's got holes all over it, breaks on the sides everywhere, and your energy leaks out. And this is what happens. Instead of raising that energy up in ourself to bring about enlightenment, we expend that energy through the different gates of the chakras for our pleasures. So he says, nothing can block you so effectively as compromise, for it shows a lack of earnestness, without which nothing can be done. Right? And so this is why we want to get out of that kind of gray area where we're sort of complying, but not really. We've got our 10 minutes of practice that we've been doing for years, every day. We've got our vices in their places. We still indulge in them with some regularity, but they're not really controlling our life. They're not a big deal. So we just kind of loop there, and we just sort of live the same life every day. That's the life of compromise. That's the life of non-awareness. We kind of fall into an automatic style of living where we make assumptions. I've done this before. I've seen this before. Life is repeating. But for the sage, the experience is everything is new continually, because the narrative ceases in the mind. Right? So be focused on what you want to do. Don't be lukewarm. All right. If you read in the book of Revelation, which is a crazy book of the Bible, but in one of the letters Paul writes, he says that if you're lukewarm, God, that you get spit out like poof. So be on or off, go forward with great zest or not. And if not, go forward with awareness so that you can get to good zest, so that you can get to earnestness. All right. So the questioner says, well, I approve of austerity, but in practice, I'm all for luxury. Right? So, okay, but luxury itself is an austerity if seen properly. So I'm all for luxury. The habit of chasing pleasures and shunning pain is so ingrained in me that all my good intentions, quite alive on the level of theory, find no roots in my day-to-day life. Boy, is this familiar? It's amazing. To tell me that I'm not honest does not help me, for I just do not know how to make myself honest. Right? This is the thing. How many times have we had that prayer? I don't know if you have or not. I've had that prayer as recently as yesterday afternoon. It's like struggling because you earnestly desire something, and you've done the discernment, but you can't get yourself to let go of the desire. It just nags you and nags you and nags you. And you can know that if a desire is nagging you, you can know for certain you haven't said no to it. If you had said no and meant it, the desire would disappear. The desire hangs on because you know your own level of sincerity, you know your own level of earnestness, and you leave a small crack because you really want to end up getting your desire. Right? And so you empower your desire by not being able to give it a firm no. What Ramakrishna says, that grand renunciation. The renunciation that looks at it and says, nope, that's not me. That's not my mind. I'm not interested in that. Boom, finished. There's no conversation. There's no ongoing struggle with temptation. That whole narrative is gone. You've said no, it's finished. And if you live like that, your mind doesn't nag you with your faults. It doesn't keep coming back to make sure that you don't want that 9th piece of cake, right? In 2 years, I'm going to be saying 22 pieces of cake. Now we're up to 9. But, just that notion, it's like, let your no be no's, and you'll find that's all that's necessary. Because I was praying yesterday about it. I was like, how do you change your desires? How do I stop wanting the wrong things in life? And I was sitting there thinking about it, and this notion of this absolute no came up in my mind, right? And without thinking about it, I practiced it on the desire that was there, and it goes away. It disappears immediately when you know inside that you're really saying no, that there's not a chance that you're going to have that 9th piece of cake. The body does not come back. I noticed that, and Mother said, right there, that's how you become earnest. Right there. It's not a magical thing that you have to become earnest and then you can say no. It's say no and mean it, and that is earnestness, right? So say no and mean it. Maharaj now says a very interesting thing. So he's saying the question was about honesty. It's like I know that I want the wrong things, and sometimes I'm dishonest about wanting the right things because I still have my eyes on this desire. What do I do? And Maharaj says very importantly, this is the real, this is the goose. This is the cream right here. You are neither honest nor dishonest. Step one. I am not definable. I don't fit in any narrative or any box. So that's the first step. Realize this narrative doesn't apply to me. Giving names to mental states is good only for expressing your approval or disapproval, right? The problem is not yours. It is your mind only. So your lack of earnestness, that's not your problem. Your mind's disearnest, but you are not the mind. So do not say I am unearnest, or I'm not earnest, or I can't get my love. You in your nature are divine and perfected. There's nothing wrong. The problem belongs to your mind. Begin by disassociating yourself from your mind. That's the neti neti. I'm not this story. Whenever you're being, quote, tempted, to borrow a word from the Christians, when that desire, that samskara is replaying in your mind and telling you stories about how fun it was last time, and you've always done this, you've never been able to win against this is your weakness. That's all narrative. And it puts you in a state of mind for experiencing that samsara, that recurring memory of a past action. And so he says, begin by disassociating yourself from the mind. So that is not my narrative. I'm in the moment right now. This moment is at the top of the sphere, as it were. I can go any direction, any direction. I have an infinite number of choices at this moment. I am not predetermined by my actions, by my story, by my egoism, by my memories, by my past. You disassociate from mind, come purely into the moment as best you can. Breathe yourself in, clear the mind, say, nothing is inevitable right now. I'm free. I can go any direction. Come to that experience, and then look at your temptation, look at the desire that's recurring. Identify where it's coming from, understand what triggered it, right? By observing, doing the discernment, seeing that it was just some other sensual input that triggered that samskara, that got the mind looping, that associated idea, you attaching to it, believing that it's about you and that it's about your desire, not the mind's desire or the body's desire. You've identified with it. By identifying with it, you've empowered it. And by giving it an insincere no, you've created a mosquito. You've created a spiritual mosquito that's going to just sit there and buzz in your head until you give in. Now, here's the trick, and I've shared this in the past. If you go to war against your desire, know that that is the height of insincerity. Because there is no war. There's only one person in you. And if you said no and meant it, there's no one to fight. But if you've been insincere and you haven't said a solid no, you know that you still want it. You know that you're hoping to leave a crack, a loophole, to get through. Then what happens is you don't say no, and that thought, that desire keeps repeating to you, keeps nagging you, and you'll fight it until you feel sincere. You'll fight against it until you'll feel like, oh, I've tried so hard and I just can't overcome this. Now I'm a victim. I enjoy my desire. And I'm just like, then you go to the mother. Oh, mother, I tried so hard. I fought so valiantly. I had to fall, but oh, who could have passed such a test? And this is the narrative. If you watch closely to your mind, these things are going on all the time. That's why we call it delusion. First of all, you break yourself into multiplicities. So your no's aren't no because you're not in charge of all of your different attachments. You're still identifying with them and giving them voice and giving them space in your body mind. So you break into all these multiple pieces. And then you go in and you treat them as real by compromising with them. Okay, I won't have a whole piece of cake. I'll have a half a piece of cake, right? And if you add that to the half a piece of cake you already have, I'm just up to one piece now. So you see how it works. And this is why we have to be so diligent and so aware, and why we have to spend time in our inner world observing, just seeing the nature of mind, understanding how it works, right? So, and holding on to this truth about ourselves. You are the Atman. You're ever free, ever pure. You are love, you are wisdom, and it's all through the expression of this being. And you stay in that place. You keep your mind on the infinite. Don't let your mind settle on particulars. That's the trick. Stay in an open space where you're always considering all the aspects. Don't pick one and land on it. That's always leading you into some vice. Anytime the mind starts to get small, right, and think only about a certain something, and then it becomes attached to that something, right? So the only one pointedness we want is on awareness. Awareness being of awareness. That's the infinity. That's the open state of mind. And when you stay in that space, you can't do wrong, because wrong is not natural to you. Your body's not going to naturally lead you into wrong places. If you start picking a particular thought and landing on it, then your mind will take you into places where, because it starts generating that energy, that desire for that wrong thing. But if you stay in that clarity of mind, you stay in the presence with your awareness firmly on the awareness, or your mind firmly in the company of your highest ideal, the divine beloved, then it's impossible to go wrong, because wrong requires a ramp up to get there. It's not a natural expression of yourself, right? And so without generating energy around your attachments, falls don't happen. So this is an important thing to remember. In the end, you're not the mind, and the problem is not yours. Your attachment to it has made it yours, and the ensuing narrative from that attachment is your trouble. It's defining you. So the questioner says, well, I may go on telling myself that I'm not the mind, that I'm not concerned with its problems, but the mind remains and its problems remained just as they were. Now, please do not tell me that it is because I am not earnest enough, or I should be more earnest. I know it, and I admit it, and only ask you, how is it done? Very good question. I'm getting a little spooked here, because I was going through this exact process with Mother yesterday, battling the mind and just really just saying, I know, I get it. I see the problem. I just don't know how to fix it. Right. And this is that whole point of Mother taking responsibility. You don't have to fix it. You simply have to stay in the light, stay in the awareness of it. Mother will fix it. The divine nature within you will emulate and bring it into harmony, as long as that awareness is there. Right? So he says, please tell me, how's it done? And Maharaj says, well, okay, at least now you're asking. Good enough for a start. That's all you have to do. Go on pondering, wondering, being anxious to find a way, right? Okay. Yes. So now you know what you need. It's the change in desire. Keep your awareness on that. Keep watching it. Keep wondering about it. Keep poking at it. Find its nature, right? And be anxious to find the way so that you can be free of it. Be conscious of yourself. Watch your mind. Give it your full attention, because you'll see how artificial these things are, how artificial your desires are. That they're looking for an inner sensation from the external world. They're looking for something of your nature in the world of the finite. The world of the finite is just a projection of mind. So it's like in a dream. In a dream, you can eat 55 pieces of cake. It's not going to affect you when you wake up. You're still going to be hungry. And so this is this world. This world is like a dream. You can't be filled by it. Whatever you're doing is not being done. It's simply a machination of mind. And so come to know this, Stop looking for God out there. Stop looking for your fulfillment out there in anything, which is the same as looking for God out there. Sit down, be quiet, recollect yourself, and become aware of being. Become aware of your presence in this moment. Go in there. And being aware of it means that a real sense of mystery arises, a real sense of potential arises. You are ever free. You are infinite. You are omniscient, omnipotent, all of these things. You can only experience them to the degree that you can silence the mind, silence the inner world. So be conscious of yourself, watch your mind, give it your full attention. So by full attention means really observe it. Don't analyze it. Don't calculate it. Don't be interested in it in any way. Just simply observe it as keenly as you can. It will teach itself. You don't have to analyze it. You don't have to draw conclusions. You don't have to do anything except observe. That infinite wisdom within you will be activated by your non-egoistic involvement with the mind. You turn off that ego, just become the watcher. You activate that intelligence within you, that awareness intelligence within that awareness. And that's how it will iron out. Go on pondering, wondering, being anxious to find a way. Be conscious of yourself. Watch your mind. Give it your full attention. Don't look for quick results. Don't look for results, actually, but certainly don't look for quick results. There may be none within your noticing. Right? You're not sensitive enough to see the changes that Mother's reaping deep inside. One of my very early lessons, I've shared it many, many times. One of my close friends at the time, who I considered a teacher to me, I was complaining about my inability to meditate, and that I was getting discouraged, and I was meditating less because I was discouraged about my inability to meditate. And boy, he scolded me. He said, "Who do you think you are that you can suddenly judge meditations? Are you enlightened, that you have the knowledge of what a good meditation is? No, you've been doing every one of your meditations in delusion. You have no ability to suss out the quality of your meditation. Yes, it may have been noisy. Yes, it may have been impure. Yes, it may have been faulty in a dozen ways. But Mother was the one who was working. And you don't know what she did. And you don't know at what level she did it. Right? She may have flicked a switch that you didn't even know you still don't know that you have. And it's not going to manifest for 5 more years. But she did it this morning during your, quote, horrible meditation. Right? So yours is not to judge the quality of your spiritual life. Yours is to continually be available to Mother to make the changes, to grow through your awareness. Right? So don't look for quick results. There may be none within your noticing. Unknown to you, your psyche will undergo a change. There will be more clarity in your thinking, charity in your feeling, purity in your behavior. Very important. This is what happens to us unknowingly. And the more unknowingly, the better, because the ego feasts on success. Ego loves to take responsibility. And if you see the growth and you see your charity and you see your loving nature, ego is going to own it and say, I did that. I'm a great person. And you're going to become that smug religious person that nobody wants to be around. And so in this way, it's the best. When you keep your mind on the beloved, you keep your mind focused on the present, and the changes happen, and you allow them to happen, but you're not paying attention to them. Your attention is on the divine presence. Unknown to you, your psyche will undergo a change. There will be more clarity in your thinking. You'll see when the mind begins that desire, when that first spark of it comes up, you'll feel it, and you'll feel the constriction that takes place in your mind and body when that arises. You'll see the fear of your conscious self because you've fallen to it so many times. You'll feel that constriction again in there. But when you're aware at that point, it's very easy to say no to a spark, very different to say no to a forest fire. So it increases our clarity of presence within ourselves. A charity in your feeling. Why? Because you're slowly becoming aware of that ananda, that love bliss, which is a constant hum behind your nature. Once you begin to touch that, you begin to dwell in that. And if you're dwelling in that, that's what you naturally express. That's what you naturally give. Charity in your feeling, purity in your behavior. You're no longer acting like a body mind. You're acting like a spirit who is of the nature of love and wisdom. That is what begins to manifest in you. That's what begins to take charge and inspire your actions. No longer a getting or a hunting or a thirsting for things. It's an inspiration of fullness when you know who you are. All of the lack of fullness belongs to body or mind. And at this point, you're very clear. I'm not that. Purity in your behavior. You need not aim at these. You will witness the change all the same. Important point. You're going to watch the changes. You're not the one changing. You're not the one doing. You are observing the changes of what happens to the deluded mind when it's in the presence of the tuning fork, Satchitananda, that constant presence. It will bring the mind into harmony over time. It will bring the body, which is also just subject to the mind, it will bring that into harmony. You will witness the change all the same, for what you are now is the result of inattention, and what you become will be the fruit of attention, right? Awareness. You're no longer living according to the stories of your mind. You're living purely in the moment and responding accurately with non-resistance to manifest self, to manifest God, to manifest love and wisdom in the moment. Questioner, well, why should mere attention make all the difference? Mere attention. That's like mere God. The mere sun. Calling a nuclear warhead a mere bomb. Why should more attention make all the difference? Why should mere attention make all the difference? Maharaj, so far your life was dark and restless, which means it's running through tamas and rajas. Tamas is that inertia of the dullness that comes with assumption. And rajas is that action that comes from hunger, right? That searching, I want, fill me, fill me. So a life that's based on those two things is a life of darkness. It goes farther and farther away from your nature. Attention, alertness, awareness, clarity, liveliness, vitality. These are all manifestations of integrity. When your yes is yes and your no is no, these things light up. They're nurtured, they're healthy, they express oneness with your true nature, right? That's sattva. Oneness is that harmony. You've brought the disparate voices of your attachments through detachment. You've brought a unity to your thinking. It is then the nature of sattva to reconcile and neutralize tamas and rajas, and to rebuild the personality in accordance with the true nature of the self, not in accordance to the constant litany of problems that egoism causes. All right, and this is one of my things. I'll share these things. I still talk to this Jungian therapist every couple of weeks about these kinds of things, and I've been working on trying to deal with this kind of. I'm going to drag you right into my therapy session here. Anyway, it's being recorded. Hello, world. So, I've been working on this kind of a dark space inside. That's something I've created this narrative about its existence being something from my childhood, some kind of problem or some kind of something, right? And it's been sitting there, and I've just been trying to deal with it, send love into it, go into it and feel it and try and hear it, and doing all of this stuff. And it's still there. And last night, it just occurred to me, what if that's a figment of your imagination? What if you've made up that story about this thing from your childhood that has to be dealt with, that's causing this darkness or this pain in the pit of your chest? What if that's just not true? Well, what if you really are free in this moment? What if it really is just a problem of thinking, a problem of wrong association? What if you stop trying to solve it and just put it down, walk away from it, let it be, let it belong to what it belongs to. You come back to the self, come back to the moment, come back to freedom, come back to purity, come back to light, right? And I tell you, last night, the reason I said I'm doing wonderful this morning is because that was successful last night. It was successful. And I woke up this morning and I was laying there, doing my morning routine before I before I get this body out of bed, reminding myself it's a dream, going through and reminding myself that I'm the Atman, that I'm ever free, I'm ever pure, that morning routine. And then getting up on the edge of my bed and just laughing at, the difference in sitting up as a 60-year-old person versus a 15-year-old me, always makes me chuckle because I hear myself becoming my dad, who grunts every time he sits down, grunts every time he stands up, sighs every time you get in and out of a car, right? You begin watching these things, you become aware of these things, and life becomes quite funny, quite wonderful, actually. Even the tough parts of it, you're just like, oh, good Lord, what are you doing to me? Right? So your life is full of dark and restlessness. This is that Thomas of assumption, right? That loss of connection with what's real. Your life has become a repeating story. It's becoming your material. It's become kind of calcified and immovable. Your days are predetermined by your necessity of paying for your desires so far. Your desires have gotten so big, they've put you into debt, and now you've got your nose to the grindstone. And that comes from tamas and the rajas, the assumption that you need to get something in order to find your fulfillment that's going to cause you to be out of balance. So either tamas, which leads toward depression and disillusionment with the world and a lack of interest in being alive, and then rajas, which is this nervous, constant attempt, like I have to stay busy. I can't just be by myself. I've got to keep myself distracted. I've got to keep my desires coming, got to keep fulfilling things. So this is your rajas. So attention, alertness, awareness, clarity, liveliness, vitality. These are all manifestations of that integrity. When there's one person in there, you're not pulled by all of your attachments. Oneness with your true nature, with that lack of noise that integrity brings, that silence that integrity brings. You experience this oneness with this self, and that's what begins expressing, not the nervous Nelly nature of the mind, of neediness, but this welling up of contentment. And you start to come from a place of fullness. It is the nature of sattva to reconcile and neutralize tamas and rajas, and to rebuild the personality in accordance with the true nature of the self. So this is all natural. It's your nature expressing. That's why there's nothing for you to do. That's why Mother has said, I'll do it all, because she is your nature, right? And so just by paying attention, seeing your faults, they will untie themselves in the light of awareness, according to Swami Prabodhananda. Sattva is the faithful servant of the self, ever attentive and obedient. So that harmony, balance within. Questioner, and shall I come to it through mere attention? Maharaj, do not undervalue attention. It means interest and also love. To know, to do, to discover, or to create, you must give your heart to it, which means attention. All the blessings flow from it. All the blessings flow from it. So don't undervalue attention, right? Because how does attention express? It is Satchitananda, right? Awareness is rooted in Satchitananda. So that's what it understands. That's what it knows. And that's why to be full of attention means to have interest, right? And to love. It's the expression of love in it. You see the love in it. You're interested in the love in it. You're interested in the expression of love. To know, these are all the verbs. These are all of your verbs of manifestation. This is what you are. To know, to do, to discover, to create. You've got to give your heart to it. Give your love to it, right? Offer it to the beloved. That's how we activate that love. Make it an offering. Make the moment an offering. All blessings flow from it. Questioner, you advise us to concentrate on I am. Is this too a form of attention? Maharaj, what else? Of course, that I am is attention. It is the attention. It is the present moment. It is Brahman. It is God. What else could it be? Give your undivided attention to the most important in your life, yourself. Of your personal universe, you are the center. Without knowing the center, what else can you know? Right. So become aware that you are the cause, the causer, as it were, of your universe, or at least the okay, we got two different levels of Vedanta going on. So in one sense, you're the doer. You create your universe. That's when we're an egoistic self. When we are in our non-egoistic self, when we're conscious, when we're aware of the moment, we watch the world happen. We watch things happen. We see that we are merely a place where things happen. We're not the doers of those things. Right? So you have to come to know the center. You have to come to see how your ego expresses, how it directs your love, how it focuses on the particulars, how it gets caught in narrative. So the questioner says, but how do I know myself? How can I know myself? To know myself, I must be away from myself. But what is away from myself cannot be myself. So it looks that I cannot know myself, only what I take to be myself. This is the dilemma that our attachment to the mind causes. We think about the self and we keep waiting to be told what the self is. He's saying, we can't seem to get there anyway. And this is the point. We've talked about this ad infinitum, that the self can't be studied as an object. So you're not learning about yourself. You're being yourself. That's what meditation is. It's not learning about yourself. It's being yourself. And you can only know yourself in silence. When everything else stops telling you what you are, when the senses, when the mind and the body stop telling you that you're a man who's 60 years old and needs retirement and blah, 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 those are all story, right? Those are all story. They are not who you are. They are not what you are. And they only lead, oh my goodness gracious, they only lead to confusion. So we don't want that confusion. In the silence of knowing, in the silence when the mind is inactive, when egoism is thinned or silenced, at least for a moment, then you know who you are. You don't have to be told who you are. You don't have to learn what you are. You are what you are. But you can't know what you are until when silence happens, interior silence. Right? Otherwise, you only know what you think you are. You only know how the ego defines you. So the questioner says, how can I know myself? To know myself, I must be away from myself. See, this is the assumption we make. Because in egoistic state, to learn something, you always objectify it, put it in front of you, and learn about it. For returning to the self, we can't put anything in front of us to learn about it. It's a matter of being, right? So how can I know myself? To know myself, I must be away from myself. But what is away from myself cannot be myself. This is why a meditation that happens in the mind is not all that helpful. So it looks that I cannot know myself, only what I take to be myself, right? Only when the ego tells me who I am I able to be what I am. Maharaj, well, quite right. As you cannot see your face, but only its reflection in the mirror, so you cannot know only your image. So you can know only your image reflected in the stainless mirror of pure awareness, right? Through pure being, in silence. This is what it is, a stainless mirror of pure awareness. That's a mind with no me and mine in it, no disturbance. Then you can see yourself clearly, reflected in that pure mind. Then you know your nature, and it happens through spontaneous being. How am I to get such a stainless mirror? Well, obviously by removing stains. See the stains and remove them. The ancient teaching is fully valid. What is seeing and what is removing? Oh my. The nature of the perfect mirror is such that you cannot see it. Whatever you can see is bound to be a stain. Turn away from it. Give it up. Know it as unwanted. Right? And how do we determine this? That which is changing is unreal. That which is unchanging alone is real. So this is that neti. Look at the things of the mind, determine, are they changing? Even the mind is constantly changing. So you say it's not real. That which is unchanging, and you bring your attention on itself within. See yourself sitting there unchanged. That self in you has been observing now for millions, billions of years within you. This body has nothing to do with it. It will use whatever it's using, everybody at this moment. Right? It's not just using this body, it's using every body to express at this moment. That divine reality is the only real thing, that oneness in everyone. That part of us that when washed of personality, washed of concepts and attributes of body, washed of attributes and concepts of mind, that self in its pure self is the one and is the same in all of us. Right? So the nature of the perfect mirror is such that you cannot see it. Whatever you can see is bound to be a stain. Right? By seeing here, he's talking about experience. You can't have an experience without the changing. And the changing is unreal. So this is what he's saying. Whatever you see, whatever you experience is a stain, which means it's unreal. It's the fault of me and mine. So whatever you see, turn away from it. Don't be interested in it. Take your gaze off of it. Don't be interested in particulars. Give it up. Know it as unwanted. Not my story. You know, not my story. You go on. Is all of this making sense so far? Is there any?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm just so thankful personally that I was a neglected child and never disciplined and educated by my parents. I'm so grateful to them.
Yes, very, very good. All right. Questioner, all perceivables, are they stains? Maharaj, all are stains. Everything everything picked up by the senses, it has to be moving, right? The sense, it's change that catches that the senses measure, right? So change is what the senses measure. And so you can't feel something unless it's moving, unless there's some change in it. You don't feel things that don't move, that don't change. Your mind tunes them out. Your mind wants the glitter. It wants the constant change. So all perceivables are stains. Anything that you perceive is unreal. That which is perceiving is the reality. That is the constant in the flow. Questioner, the entire world is a stain. Maharaj, yes, it is. How awful. So the universe is of no value. Maharaj, it is of tremendous value. By going beyond it, you realize yourself. So the world is the means through which we know the self, through its transcendence, through rising above it. Right? The world is the not self. By discarding the not self, we discover the self. And why do we do it that way? Because the self can't be objectified, can't be limited, can't be described, can't have attributes attached to it. Right? It's always pure. So the world is of tremendous value. By going beyond it, you realize yourself. Questioner, but why did it come into being in the first instance? Maharaj, You'll know it when it ends. When the story's complete, you'll know why it was there. You're the one that created it. But you will only be able to discover the answer to why you created it when you find that silence within, when you step outside of it completely. Then it becomes self-evident. Why? Questioner, will it ever end? Maharaj, yes, for you. When did it begin? Maharaj, now. See, this is where we find our freedom. The universe is newly created every moment. You're never looking at the same universe. Every time you look, your mind reconstructs the universe. That's how it can change things, right? If that plant is there and then it gets moved, then my universe now is recreated with no plant in it. Or the plant is over there instead of over there. And so the universe is constantly being recreated. And it's being recreated now. That's what gives us our freedom and our infinite potential. It does not end now. Maharaj, you don't let it. That's what attachment is. The universe would end with each moment and be refreshed, brand new in the next one, if you would stop trying to insist that you have to bring things from the old universe to the new universe. If you would just let things flow out of existence as they do, there would be no attachment. And if there was no attachment, there would be no narrative. And with no narrative, there would just be this continually new moment, always new, always full of light, always full of infinite potential in every direction. It's your freedom. So does this moment end? Does the universe end now? You don't let it. Questioner, well, I want to let it. Maharaj, you don't. See, this is what happens when we're not aware of our inner self. We're not aware that we're holding on to our attachments, not because we don't have a choice, but because, in fact, we have made a choice to hold on to our attachments. And that letting go doesn't come easy. It happens only in two ways, either through the love of God, right, and the power of love to undo your need for these attachments, or through a keen discernment where you go in and you've understood the nature of these attachments. You've understood that they've given you nothing. And through that discernment, you let go, right, of that. But that's the hard way, but that's also a way. So I want to let it. No, you don't. All your life is connected with it, right? Your whole narrative is grown out of it. So all of your life is connected with it. Your past and your future, your desires and your fears, all of them, their roots, all of them have roots in the world. Without the world, where are you? Who are you? Questioner, well, that's exactly what I came to find out. Maharaj, and I am telling you exactly this. Find a foothold beyond, and all will be clear and easy. Yeah, just touch for a moment that world beyond. You know, that part of you which has never changed. That part of you that knows you and has maintained your sense of you despite the constant change of everything else. There's a rock in the stream of your being. That rock is the one that is looking and listening and paying attention to all the senses all the time. It's the one that's looking and paying attention to all of the thoughts, all of the contents of mind all the time. Become aware of that. Use the changing to remind you of the unchanging, to become aware of that in you which is watching all the change. So just constantly use the mind, use the moment, use everything that appears to be changing to point at the one unchanging thing that is witnessing it all, that one thing which isn't change, and that by mere necessity, because if it was change and it was part of the change, it would not be able to observe the change like a person in an elevator. Right? So this is that. So we'll stop there for this morning.
It's like a part of you that's never been born.